One of the biggest storylines for North Carolina in the first weekend of the tournament was teams sagging off of Elliot Cadeau. How are the Tar Heels going to handle that moving forward?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, March 28th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you've joined us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch, and a special shout out to all you everydayers out there. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Do you ever wonder what kind of adventures might be waiting for you around the next corner? Why don't you take the Nissan Rogue or Pathfinder or Armada and go find your next big adventure? Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Folks, it's here. It's happening. The show you've all been waiting for. Coach Bill Robinson, Coach Pat Kilby, not Coach Isaac Shade, all joining you, coming together today. It's the trio. We've been trying to do it, and here we are, fellas. I'm so excited for this. I love that we just spent like 30 minutes hanging out and talking before we started recording. Probably the favorite part of my night. Apologies to all the rest of you that you didn't get to hear our fun conversation, but that's the highlight of my night, and I'm so thankful for both of you very, very seriously. Y'all, it's game day, Sweet 16, Carolina, Alabama. We'll talk about that. Got some great conversations today that we're going to have. Who's going to be the third scorer tonight? How did the Tar Heels slow down Mark Sears? My goodness. And but what we want to get into first is looking back a little bit at the first weekend of the tournament and some things that can be learned that we can look at moving forward. So, gentlemen, here's the question I want to start with. Elliot Cadeau and his shooting struggles. Like, it's just the big elephant in the room right now, unfortunately, but it is a thing. And when we get to this point of the season, it's all about matchups and what happens. Let's be honest, that teams are only going to continue sagging off of Elliot and making it even more pronounced. So, Coach Rob, if you are Hubert Davis and the coaching staff, how do you go about trying to mitigate that issue?
We're not going to talk about it as an issue with Elliot himself. We may talk about it as a coaching staff, but we're not going to make it an issue. It's just going to put more pressure on him to make shots. What we're going to do is we're going to encourage him when he does catch the ball to make quick decisions. Don't stand there and look and then all of a sudden think, oh, I'm wide open, I need to take this. So what's the next step when you catch it? You're catching it, you're reversing it. You're catching, you're attacking it. But we're not making him – don't want to make it an issue where he has to think about it. That's something we can address in the offseason. But right now, for the here and now, we just want him to catch and go.
Pac, would you change anything schematically at all to help, or would you just keep rolling and trust Elliot to still be able to get to the bucket?
Well, first of all, I'll say I totally agree with Coach Rob. You know, at this time of the year, it's about instilling confidence in your guys and trying to get the best version from them. So I agree with him on that. You know, I think the one thing that could be done is, you know, getting with the way teams guard him, the way they sag off, using him as a ball screen or something.
Like that first Duke game.
Yeah. And then getting some, you know, kind of getting him thinking about cutting and just using himself, not standing as much, not necessarily being on the perimeter ready to catch and shoot, but moving off the ball, being a screener for others and getting others open, and then seeing what that might create for himself. But at the same time, that's not always going to be achievable. There are going to be times where Elliot's going to catch the ball on the perimeter, and that goes back to what Coach Rob says. It's got to be quick decisions, and at this point, you got to be breathing life and confidence into him.
That's a good word from both of you, and obviously you know it because you have to manage these egos and these skill sets and the mental state of these players all the time. One of the things I wondered about this week, and I wanted to bounce this off of you guys, that I've noticed that Gonzaga has started doing with Ryan Nembhard, who himself is not a phenomenal three-point shooter, is instead of using pick and roll action out at the arc, they've started bringing it to like mid pick and roll, like inside the free throw line or right around the free throw line. Would that help in this endeavor any, Coach Rob?
It makes it a lot harder to go under those screens because we know that Elliot can hit that mid-range jumper. He can hit that elbow jumper. So it's a great tactic to take it a little deeper, get it a little deeper, and then allows him to even if he comes off of that, now it's one dribble and a score instead of needing 2 or 3 to get to the rim. So I think that's a little adjustment, just a subtle adjustment that's really easy to implement.
Can you do that, Pack, without messing with the psyche like we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think so. And you don't have to present it like we're going to make this change because you're struggling to shoot the ball. Present it like, hey, this is going to be an option for you to attack. It's going to be an option for you to get more scoring opportunities. And the other thing I just wanted to add to what Coach Rob said, you think about when you come off of those ball screens even deeper in the lane like that, think about the position that puts the help defense in. When they're coming off of that and they're already right there at the elbow or in the paint, that's a shot Elliot can hit, or he can attack and create from there, depending on what the help defense does. So it puts the defense in a little bit of a bind or predicament. And I think it's a worthy adjustment that could be considered by the coaching staff.
Especially if there's more sagging and more help, because then it leaves Cormac or Harrison even more wide open out on the perimeter, perhaps. So that's a possibility. All right. Turning from Elliot, I want to look back to last weekend and ask 2 questions. What did you see in the first weekend of the tournament from the Heels that was encouraging? And then I'm going to ask the other question, the negative one side of that. So, Coach Rob, let's come back to you here first. What did you see from the Tar Heels, either against Wagner or Michigan State or both, that was encouraging to you?
To me, the encouragement, I think it's more from the Michigan State game, was that they got punched in the mouth early. And there was no panic. There was no real, maybe on our parts, because the game, you start to think, oh, no, that just didn't feel good early. Responded really well. They seemed like a very mature team with when you get down in a tournament, it makes it even seem even that much. The heat comes on a lot harder in a tournament, knowing that your season's done if you lose today. But they seem to be mature. They seem to handle it really well. And instead of getting nervous, they just put the pedal down and took care of business. So that was really encouraging to me.
For me, I think the most encouraging thing was the bench play. I thought we got some, particularly in the first game, Jalen Withers played great. And then in the second game, we just saw Seth Trimble's athleticism shine through. And Jalen Washington did some great things. And, right now, that's really what you want. You want to be able to go 8 deep. You want to be able to trust all 8 of those guys, and you want them to be able to bring energy and life off the bench. And I felt like those guys did that this past weekend. And so hopefully we can see that from them tonight.
Yeah, for me, it is the awareness of the third scorer. And we're going to talk more about that later. But I love that in game 1, there was Jalen Withers. I love that in game 2, it was Harrison. And from a scouting standpoint, if I'm Nate Oates, I'm like, all right, I know I got to contend with RJ and Armando, which that in itself is difficult enough. But beyond that, I don't know who it could be. Any of these dudes could have a night. It could be Cormac going off like he did against Alabama when he played for Notre Dame a couple years ago. So I love that wrinkle for the Tar Heels. All right, guys, same question, but the other side. What did we each see from the Tar Heels in the first weekend that was most concerning? Pack, why don't you go this time first, and then Coach Rob, you just follow right up.
Yeah, for me, I think the most concerning thing is the slow starts. And that could have just been, I don't know, maybe a lackadaisical approach. I'm not sure what it was, but that's concerning for me. And especially going, against a team like Alabama and the way they shoot the ball, they can bury you early. And so we can't afford to have that type of slow start tonight. So I'll say that's the most concerning. But I also think Carolina's going to be locked in and ready to go. So I'm not overly concerned about it.
I think mine is still Elliot and his inability to make a jump shot. That just scares me. I think it means more minutes for Seth Trimble. And I think we talk about Alabama a little bit more, but his defense, I think, will be very much needed tonight with Sears. I think that he's going to get a lot of minutes, and he's going to have a lot of minutes on him. And that's the biggest thing that I was just disappointed with. But again, I think it's something we can overcome with our depth. And I look to see Seth play maybe even more minutes than Elliot tonight.
Yeah, I love that. Well, great conversations. Love it. Now, round 1, it was Jalen Withers. Round 2, it was Harrison Ingram. I just talked about it a second ago. I want to know who's going to be that third musketeer joining Armando and RJ leading the scoring charge tonight. We'll have that conversation in just a second. Right after I tell you that this week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our good friends at Nissan. Each week we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. Who is it that we're talking about? It's the North Carolina Tar Heels, who can only be described as an armada. This one seed is as hardcore as it gets out there, so it's no wonder that they took care of coming back against Michigan State, as we talked about earlier. Now they're in the Sweet 16 tonight against Alabama. They are a number one seed and one of the favorites to make it all the way to the NCAA Final Four. We'll see if they can do it starting tonight against Alabama. So take the Nissan Rogue, Pathfinder, or Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Better Together. Are you tired of the same old daily fantasy grind? You make a roster, cross your fingers, you hope for the best, or maybe you worry about losing on the last leg of your pick'em entry. Well, I'd like to introduce you to Better Together, the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork triumphs talent and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, then strategize with your partner to boost your odds, climb the leaderboard together. Grab a friend and join the social DFS movement. Better Together, I love this because it also gives inexperienced players an immersive way to learn more about it. Teaming up with and following the lead of more experienced friends and teammates in a team contest can take away the fear of diving in on your own for the first time. Tar Heel fans, you need to show that you're the best players by participating in the Fan Challenge Series for a chance to win real money prizes. See the app for contest details. Download Better Together right now from the App Store. Sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Remember that code, LOCKED ON, because playing alone is fun, but winning together is even better. We said it, but it's game day, North Carolina, Alabama tonight, approximately. I love that it's approximately, but then 9:39 p.m. Eastern time. It's on CBS. FanDuel has it, Carolina -3.5. All time, the Tar Heels lead this series 8-5. And the Heels had a 3-game winning streak in this series prior to last year's loss in Portland, which we just will not talk about. Nate Oates is the coach. He's been there. This is his 5th season. We know it because we've talked about it this week. Highly elite offense, highly not elite defense. That's what you need to know. This year, they've really only had one elite victory. That was over Auburn at home in SEC play, but they've not had any bad losses. That's part of what makes them so good. They've held up their end of the bargain. They've used multiple starting lineups, but there's 4 mainstays. Mark Sears, we'll talk more about him in a little bit. Grant Nelson, the 6'11 transfer from North Dakota State. Rylan Griffin, and Aaron Estrada. That's the dudes. The revolving door at that 5th starting spot has been Latrell Wrightsell, who is usually the starter. A little bit more on him in a second. Jaron Stevenson, you know that name because the Tar Heels thought they were going to get him. And then Nick Pringle, who we saw against the Tar Heels in that game last year. I bring up Latrell Wrightsell because he suffered a head injury earlier this season, had another one Sunday against Grand Canyon, had to leave the game early. And it's kind of back and forth on will he be ready for tonight. In fact, on Wednesday afternoon, Nick Pringle said to people, quote, "I honestly think Latrell will be fine. I think he will definitely play." Not the same message from Nate Oates, who said that Wrightsell is being reevaluated on a day-to-day basis. Quote, "I'm not sure if he's going to be available tomorrow." So game day decision. I think we can leave it at that. For Tar Heels, I kind of hope he doesn't play because he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the entire nation. So we'll have to, obviously the team will be ready for either version of Alabama. All right, guys, the most serious and important question I will ask you this entire episode. Are you ready? Here we go. Coach Bill Robinson. Last year in this matchup, there were 4 overtimes. How many are we going to see tonight?
Only 2 tonight. I can't see us going to. It's only going to be half the amount of overtimes we had last time. What do you think, Pat?
50 minutes instead of an hour. I love it.
Well, it better not be any because it's already a late tip-off, and I don't know if my heart can handle any more overtimes with them, so hopefully none.
I'm with that, too, because I'm going to record a live postcast afterwards. Then I got to record a live Locked On College basketball after that, and then Friday's Tar Heel show. So please, dear goodness, end this game quickly in regulation. All right. In all seriousness, I asked it, who's going to be the third musketeer? Jalen Withers in round 1, Harrison Ingram in round 2. Who is it tonight? Pack, let's start with you.
I listened to Nate Oates' presser, and he said something that really stood out. And it seems to me he's really hyper-focused on Armando Bacot and what
good reason. He's got nothing for him.
Yeah, exactly. And he talked about how they've played some big-time bigs in the past, and they were 0-4 in those games. And so I think there's going to be a lot of focus on Armando, which I think is going to open up a lot for Harrison. And I think he's going to be able to crush it on the glass, particularly the offensive rebounds, get some second chance points, get to the free throw line. So my prediction is that Harrison has a well of a game and that he ends up being that third musketeer.
I didn't want to pick the same one, but I am, because I think it's Harrison. I really do. And mine's more about just Harrison being a gamer. This is why he came to Carolina. He came to Carolina to play in the tournament, and I just see him raising level game, and I see him having a big night, and I see a lot of different things. I see his stats just stuffed from all across the line. I see him grabbing rebounds, steals. I see him getting on the floor. A lot of just that energy, that high energy that we need, and Harrison's got to be the guy.
Well, he's the third musketeer, and we're 3 for 3. I was going to use Harrison Ingram too, so I won't belabor the point, but let me add this. While we've had 2 different third musketeers, the 4th leading scorer in each of the first 2 rounds was none other than Cormac Ryan, who had 14 one game, 13 for the other. So regardless of who the third guy is, I mean, if that's Cormac, that's awesome. But if not, just watch for Cormac's steady hand, just kind of adding those points here and there where he needs to. That veteran savvy is critically important, again, in this game. Now, this was a question, I believe, that Pac, you kind of posed to us as we were preparing for this show a couple days ago. And you asked it, and I want to pose it here. Does North Carolina getting into a track meet with Alabama help or hurt the Tar Heels' chances? Coach Rob, since Pac posed it, I want to go to you first for your response.
I think this team has the ability to play at any pace. I think if you try to play slow, they're able to play slow. If you want to play fast, they've got the athletes, they've got the talent to play fast. So I think if I'm Nate Oates, I don't want to try to run with them. I really don't. But if I'm Nate Oates and that's what we do, you got to go with your horse. So even though my personal preference might not be to run, I think either team is going to get up and down. I would expect the game to be high 80s, 90s, or plus. So I think they will run. I think it's going to be a watch.
Yeah.
For me, I kind of, I may have went the opposite route, and I think where I went with it was just the veteran experience that we have, and knowing how Alabama thrives off of tempo. And they don't want to play a lot of defense. They want to get you to take a quick shot, and then they want to go match it with a quick shot. And I could see Carolina. Hubert loves to get in his bag offensively with his set calls. I could see Carolina using their experience to slow it down, pound it inside to Armando, and play off of that. And so for me, I'm not sure that it helps us or hurts us to get into a track meet. I just project that we go a little bit slower pace, try to value every possession and get the best look we can each possession, and make them guard a little bit, because they
can't and they don't.
Exactly. and when we're wearing them down defensively and making them guard 20 seconds per possession, then that's going to make it tougher for them offensively. And so I could see a world where Carolina does slow it down and Hubert gets into his offensive coordinator mode and starts dialing some stuff up.
Yeah, let me put some numbers on this thing. The Alabama at KenPom is 8th in the nation in adjusted tempo, 3rd in the nation in terms of shortest average length of possession. That's bonkers. For comparison's sake, the Tar Heels in those same 2 categories are 41st and 36th. So what's interesting to me is Carolina plays fast, but not that fast. And so if Alabama's going warp speed, I might go down from 6th gear to 4th gear or something like that, where I'm still playing fast compared to the majority of America, but I'm frustrating Alabama a little bit, as you guys are kind of saying, by forcing them to guard some, making them just a little bit uncomfortable. I think, we talked some about Carolina's inexperience. I think the ability to use that veteran savvy and force Alabama to guard and not get baited into the level of track meet that they want to have, I think could be good for Carolina's side of it. And then just go guard them as best you can. Look, Alabama's going to score, folks. We just know that. As Coach Rob said, this game is easily a game in the 80s. That's just what Alabama's going to do. They've scored under 88 times this entire season. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so for me, I'm looking to just gear it down 1 or 2 from warp speed to maybe just real fast. Any other thoughts on those conversations? Coach Rob, I see you opening your mouth there.
To me, it's shot selection. Because if they're going to take long shots and we get long rebounds and we're able to get 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, that's the fast I think we need to do. But if people are back, we've got to recognize that's when we pound it in the post. And they don't have anybody to stop Armando. I think that's what they're most worried about. So Pac's absolutely right. But I think that shot selection really determines how fast we can play.
That's good. And if I might add, I thought that was a big part of Carolina getting down early to Michigan State was poor shot selection and poor shot takers, if I might add that as well. Like I didn't think it was always the right guys getting the right shots. And so I think that's a critical point, Coach Rob, to go along with what Pac had said earlier about if you get that slow start against Alabama, you're done because they're out to the races, and that's a hole you're probably not going to climb out of. So all of this boils together. Now, speaking of that Alabama offense, we know it. We've talked about him. Mark Sears is the head of the snake. That crafty lefty, by the way, like yours truly, is the head of the snake for Alabama's high-powered octane offense. Just how are the Tar Heels going to go about slowing him down? We'll try to answer that question in just a second. Right after I tell you that this episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV, which is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis like we're bringing you here today. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as that Fire TV stick that plugs right on into your existing TV to provide access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's March Madness or today, the opening day of Major League Baseball, my Braves got pushed back to Friday because of a rain delay in Philly. Whatever, they're delaying the inevitable. You're going to want to have a Fire TV. I legitimately have a Fire TV stick on every TV in my house because I love it. I love how easy it is to use. I love the layout of it. And also, they're a wonderful little handy-dandy remote here. It's got these buttons that take me straight to Prime Video or Netflix, Disney Plus, whatever it is. It's great. Not to mention, Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. And that includes all of us here at the Locked On Network. Great news and entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. You want to get in on that? Check out Fire TV channels and Fire TV on Alexa devices. If you haven't done so, you got to do it. Trust all of us on that. To learn more, visit amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Mark Sears is the head of the snake for Alabama. I love it because in some ways it's kind of a mirror image of RJ Davis. I don't know that they'll be guarding each other because I wouldn't be surprised if each team tried to put some length on the other. But one of the unique things about Mark Sears is that he's a lefty, little southpaw like yours truly, crafty guy. Now, one of the questions I want to ask you guys as coaches is that is a unique thing that you kind of have to be in your head a little bit about, because you just have to guard him slightly differently than you would a righty. So just based on that side of things alone, Coach Rob, how do you have to think about guarding a guy like Mark Sears, who's a phenomenal dynamic basketball player, and oh, by the way, he's a southpaw?
I think when you get him on a certain side of the floor, you don't want him to be able to get to a strong hand. You're used to sending guys to be on the right side of the floor to the baseline side. Now you don't want him to get to the middle anytime. In the Carolina's philosophies, but to be able to just sit on that other shoulder, you're so used to sitting on somebody's right shoulder, now you're on the left shoulder. To me, the biggest key is just not to touch the ball anyway, to run multiple people's at him. Just don't let him catch the basketball. Really hard to score if you don't catch it, but it's going to be really interesting.
Little known fact, in basketball, you cannot score if it's not in your hand. It's wild.
Exactly. That would be my philosophy, tonight, to make sure. And I see a lot of different people rotating onto him. You talk about length. I'd love to see Jalen Withers on him. I just think that his length would make it really, really hard. And, of course, I think we'll see Seth Trimble on him a bunch.
To add to that, I could see Cormac being on him some because he does have kind of that sneaky, under the radar, innate ability to keep the ball in front, and he's got some of that length also. And I totally agree, Coach Rob, with what you're saying as far as run him around and don't let him catch it, make him work to get it. And then when he does, he thrives off of creating his own shot. And so we've got to do a really good job of getting in the ball and, getting him out of his comfort zone and getting him off the three-point line. He loves the three-point line. Let's force him to take tough contested twos and or not let him get the ball at all, like Coach Rob talked about. And then the other thing I did want to mention real quick is making him guard on the other end. It's tough to play defense and then go to the offensive end and get chased around for 20 seconds before you get the ball and then have to create a shot and hit it on top of that. So we need to do a really good job of making him guard on the other end as well.
Yeah, to that point about three-point shooting, Sears hits 43.5% of his threes, attempting 5.6 of them a game. So that's not too shabby, folks, by the way, if you're keeping score at home. Here's the thing that I think about with that is, it's not just running Sears off the three-point line. It's these dudes are just going to be chucking them up. That's Alabama's game. As many threes as we can get. That's just the Nate Oates modern philosophy. And so it is a game of running guys off the three-point line. But as Pac said, Sears is a critical part of that. Reitzel, if he does play, will be another critical part of that as well. So, kind of turning attention back to the Tar Heels now. You guys each just talked some. We talked about Seth. We talked about Jalen Withers. We talked about our third scorer earlier, and we each went with Harrison Ingram. So flipping back to the bench, and with all due respect to Paxson and to James Okonkwo and Zayden High, of the main three reserves, the Jaelens and Seth, who do you foresee having the biggest impact in this game? Pac, why don't you start us off there?
Yeah, for me, I hope I'm not stealing everybody's answer. I just feel like it's going to be Seth, and it goes back to exactly what Coach Rob talked about earlier. This might not be the best game for Cadeau to play just because of the shooting deficiencies, but also because of the impact that Seth brings defensively and what I feel like he's going to be able to do guarding Sears. And so that alone, to me, makes Seth the biggest impact, what he does defensively. But I also think he's going to be able to do some things offensively because of how crafty he is at getting to the rim and how explosive he is once he gets there. And so for me, I think it's going to be Seth.
I'll go with Jalen Withers. I think he's going to play more minutes. I think the pace of the game, his length, his athleticism is going to allow him to make a big impact. And it may not be with points, but I think it's going to be with his defense and his rebounding.
Well, then let me say some words about J-Wash. Why not? One of the things I think is, we talked about how none of us think that Alabama has anything inside for Armando Bacot. I don't care that Nate Oates wants to focus on him. He's still going to feast, whether it's scoring or distributing. Either way, Mondo has a big impact. But because they have some more, like I talked about what Grant Nelson as kind of a shorter, skinnier, slightly less talented Kyle Filipowski, to my estimation. But I think Jalen Washington could have, that could be a good matchup for him where he could have an impact on both sides of the ball when it's Nelson that's in the game and when Armando needs a breather. And so I think there is a world in which Jalen Washington, let me specify that, could have a big impact here as well. But ultimately, look, all three of those dudes have to be locked in and ready to go because they are going to be needed. Same thing with Paxson. We saw what a big impact that defensive rebound he got, the run out and the kick out to RJ in the Michigan State comeback was. And so everyone's got to be ready. You just don't know when your name's going to be called, as Hubert Davis always says. Here's kind of the last question. And this was actually another one from Pac. And Coach Rob, I want to pose it to you. Last weekend, the Tar Heels were just down the road in Charlotte. Now they've shipped off to the West Coast, so that's some travel, and they got to deal with that. But for Alabama, it is their second straight weekend of cross-country travel. They were up in Spokane last weekend for the opening round, and now straight out to LA for the Sweet 16 matchup. What sort of toll, and I know there's always the these are young men and they're resilient and they can do that, but legitimately, let's get beyond just that facade and say what sort of impact does that have on a basketball team?
I think the impact's huge. Just sitting around can get you tired. Sitting on a bus all day gets you exhausted. And these kids, I mean, they're staying at nice hotels. They're not at the Red Roof Inn. So they're comfy. They're in their own bed. They're not sleeping 4 in a room like we do when we travel. So, I mean, they've got everything that they need. But it gets old to be away from your dorm room, to be away from the food and from your friends, from the things that are normal. It takes a staff to be able to really be resilient and look forward to seeing how they can make it as normal as possible for these kids, keep them busy, yet at the same time keep them ready mentally, I think, more than anything.
I love that. Thank you for that input, Coach. That's really helpful and thoughtful. All right, fellas, we got to get out of here. I do want to make a game prediction, though, because I want to get everyone's quick thoughts. Pat Kilby, you start us off, brother.
Give me the Tar Heels 84-78. I got us holding Bama under 80.
I'm all in on that. I love it. Coach Rob.
I got the Heels 91-80. I think they're going to win by double digits. I think their defense is different.
Man, that's right. I've been saying 85-80 this week, so I'm going to stick with that. But we're all in that similar range. Boy, I'd love to hold them under 80. That would be incredible. I like the 91-80, the 11-point gap. Give me that. Give me that noise. And Tar Heels having another impressive victory. Folks, I hope you have enjoyed, speaking of Three Musketeers, this little motley crew of Three Musketeers coming at you on Thursday's episode. It has been a pure joy to be here with both of my good coaching buddies who we talk each week on the show. I really hope you all have enjoyed the experience as well. If you're not part of the Locked On Discord community like all three of us are, you're missing out. Come on in, come for the Tar Heels, stay for the community. It's going to be off the chain during the game tonight, so make sure you're there. The link for that's in the show notes. It's free to join. If you haven't subscribed on audio, you can do that anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you haven't subscribed on videos, it's just right here on YouTube. If you're watching, hit that button as well. If you want to make sure you're in when I go live tonight, make sure you hit that bell notification because that will let you know when we go live. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Hopefully a very good night to be a Tar Heel. We will talk again tonight after the game. But until then, from all three of us, deuces up. Peace.